Week 14? Week 14? December? That's when Drew Lock, according to Mike Kliss, is likely to be activated off the IR. Yeah. Thank you. Suffice it to say, if you've ever listened to this program, and welcome to the Fan Late Night. My name's Sean Drotar. Thanks for listening. I am not a fan of that decision. I've said since they lost to the Oakland Raiders in week 1 that the most important job left for the Broncos was to find out if Drew Lock can be their franchise quarterback. I've continued that all the way through, and now over the last 3 weeks, it's been very clear to me when Drew Lock should start. When he should start is week 11 at Minnesota. That's November 17th, not this weekend against Indy. Not the weekend after that against Cleveland, but then after the bye against Minnesota. That's the time. The Denver Broncos, who are 2-5, are not going to the playoffs. I appreciate that the people in Dove Valley are expecting to win games, trying to win games. I do. I appreciate that. That's what they should be doing. No problem there. 2 players can be activated from the injured list. One will be Tim Patrick when he's healthy. According to John Elway yesterday, in his conference call about the trade of Emmanuel Sanders, said that would be after the bye. Okay. Fine. I get that. You just traded Sanders. Patrick's been a pretty good receiver. He also is a good special teams player, backs up tons of positions. Yeah. Okay. Great. No problem. The other 3 availables are Jake Butt, who has 1 more year left on his rookie deal, but I think it's pretty clear that you can't necessarily count on him to be healthy. Moreover, you picked Noah Fant in the first round, so if you're going to work a tight end in there, that's the guy you need to work in, okay? It's just that simple. That's the guy. Theo Riddick, a pass catcher out of the backfield, is the other option. Now the Broncos like him. I know he's an interesting player. Broncos need receiving help. Yes, of course. But it needs to be Drew Lock. This is very straightforward. Mike Kliss's article for 9news.com today said that Lock was the furthest along in his recovery. So he's the closest to getting back, right? Kliss's article, by the way, was entitled Ready or Not, Drew Lock Must Wait. Why? Why in the world would that be the case? The Athletic's Nikki Javala, of our Fan Broncos insider, reported in The Athletic, and went back to April, compiled some of the things John Elway said, very wisely, by the way. Going back to April saying, quote, we tend to look at it as the Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers type situation, which, again, if you've listened to this program, you would find out that every team has made that excuse ever since Aaron Rodgers, as if Aaron Rodgers sitting for years is what made him good. That would be a, let's say, fundamental misread of the reality of the situation. Aaron Rodgers had a rock-solid, no argument Hall of Famer in front of him who wasn't exactly playing out the string at that point. Drew Lock does not have that. Let's just say, to be completely fair here, Joe Flacco, with his 65.7 completion percentage, which seems really good, except you look at today's completion percentage and it's just okay. 7.2 yards per, bad. And 6-to-5 interception ratio, also bad. Suffice it to say that 2019 Joe Flacco is not necessarily 2005 Brett Favre. it's not an apples to apples comparison, but lots of teams fall for this and they make the mistake thinking, well, we can go that way. It's Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre and he's good. Well, cool. That's great. But the argument you're making when you say that is that Aaron Rodgers sitting behind Brett Favre is what made him good. If I coincidentally go along a hike by the Cherry Creek Reservoir and I'm carrying a tree branch and I don't get attacked by a cougar, that's great, but it doesn't mean that the reason I didn't get attacked by a cougar is that I happened to be carrying a tree branch. Correlation is not causation. And teams make this mistake all the time. Yes, I'm walking along the Cherry Creek Reservoir, and yes, I was carrying a stick, and there, I didn't get attacked by a cougar. Therefore, I didn't get attacked by a cougar because I was carrying a tree branch. No, that's not how it works. Those things aren't actually related. Aaron Rodgers, and I think his career's borne that out pretty well, was a really good quarterback who simply had to wait because he had a phenomenal player, a living legend in front of him. In case you were curious, when he finally did get to start in 2008, he had started no games in his career, by the way. Sat for 3 years with no starts. 0. First full year, 4,038 yards, 28 touchdowns, 13 picks. Next year, jumped to 44, 34, 30 touchdowns, and 7 picks with the lowest interception percentage in the league. That might be more that Aaron Rodgers is really good and less that he sat on his backside watching Brett Favre for 3 years. So the Broncos making that same mistake is really, really dangerous. And keep in mind, this team is not going to the playoffs. I understand if you're the Broncos, you have to believe you're going to go win out the string, and you're going to be right. You have to believe it. You have to try. Yes, you do. At the same time, you have to be realistic. Okay? I don't pretend that I know as much about football as John Elway. I don't pretend I know what being a GM is like John Elway. But I understand to a certain extent in this line of work the mindset that takes. I was born in Denver. I was raised in Franktown, Colorado. I went to college at CU Boulder. The Denver Broncos have been my team for as long as I can remember. And I'm not going to pretend that it's not the case. Hey, if you were to walk through my closet, you'd see quite a few Broncos things in there that get thrown on the weekend. Sure. You bet. I'm not even going to pretend they're not my favorite team. They are. I hope they win every game. But my job requires me to look at it objectively. And that means looking at the reality of the situation and talking about it with you accordingly. I can want something. I can hope for something with all of my heart. But ignoring the reality around it just because I want it, that's foolhardy. RamosLaw.com text line is 303-713-1043. The Broncos, if they activate Drew Lock at all, will only do so at the end of the season. You got an idea how I feel about it. What do you feel about it? I'll continue to explain why it's such an atrocious idea next. Okay, I mentioned this last night, and I'm going to mention it again. Broncos country, if you have enjoyed the way the 2019 season has gone, and if you've had a tremendously entertaining time watching the team go 2-5, struggle on offense, and not find an identity, well, according to everything coming out of Dove Valley, you're going to love 2020. The Denver Broncos, according to Mike Kliss, are unlikely to activate Drew Lock before Week 14. So we can start practicing in Week 11 if the Broncos are 2-7 or 3-6 at the bye. If the Broncos win against Indianapolis, they will take that fool's gold and then decide they're still in the hunt. If they were to somehow win against Indianapolis and Cleveland, they believe they're a playoff team. Drew Lock might not even be activated at all. Okay. But if the Broncos split the next two games before the bye, which the way they've played would be a tremendously positive outcome, actually, then it's likely that Lock would start practicing in Week 11. My mind, he should be playing in Week 11. He should be starting in Week 11. But according to Mike Kliss, who has sources that run very, very high in the Broncos information, basically, when Mike writes something, let's just say he's not speculating, okay? Let's just say he's been informed. This is how it works. This is how the sausage gets made. It's the nature of reporting in 2019. Not knocking it. It's the way it works. Okay? Teams have media outlets that they have official deals with. And that's how it is. But the teams that they have official deals with, well, let's just say they don't generally have to dig too deep to get stories. You just ask the right person. Whether that person may or may not be a Hall of Fame quarterback, no, I don't entirely know. But that's not speculation. So Lock would start practicing in Week 7. And I will read you the quote from Kliss today. The plan at that point would be to practice 3 full weeks before Lock would be activated as a backup quarterback for the final 4 games of the season, with a chance to play in the final game or 2. Okay. He continues with saying, to rush a rookie quarterback and misses half the preseason and regular season with an injury is to do more harm than good. Maybe that's a pretty definitive statement. I'm not sure I would agree with that. But you're looking at what it sounds like to be maybe the exact Patrick Mahomes plan, right? Maybe the Broncos, Elway talked about the idea that he saw this Flacco Lock situation as Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. I'll tell you what, I don't know which one is Brett Favre. I don't know which one is Aaron Rodgers, and I don't care. If either of these guys plays anything like Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers, now's the time. That would be awesome. So, great. I hope that's the situation. Don't know which is. Just any time, though. That'd be cool. I think most Broncos fans would agree. So, this is where it is. Looks like they're going to try the Alex Smith idea. Maybe in the final game or 2 of the season. Alex Smith was out. Patrick Mahomes started the final game against the Broncos. You might remember him dissecting the Broncos in humiliating fashion, much like, this last time they played the Chiefs. And then Mahomes took over the gig. Well, maybe the Broncos are looking at that. Drew Lock might be ready in the final game of the year. And in one game of the year against Oakland, maybe the Broncos will be able to know, yep, that's our guy going forward. We're good. We don't have to go into the draft and get a quarterback. I'd like to have a better sample size myself because the history of the Broncos organization selecting quarterbacks. How's it going? Brock Osweiler. Oh, wait, you're retired. Made a lot of money, though. Good for you. How's it going? Zach Dysett. How's it going, Trevor Simeon? Sorry about your foot. Hope it feels better. How's it going, Paxton Lynch? How's it going, Chad Kelly? Let's just say I'd like to see one of the Broncos draft picks a quarterback play more than 1 or 2 games before I decide if he's the real deal and you pass potentially on a bunch of quarterbacks that are in the first round. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to ask. Do you? Ramos Law text line is 303-713-1043. Let's say, you had a chance to pick, I don't think the chance to pick him, but let's say you have a chance to pick Tua Tagovailoa or Joe Burrow out of LSU or Justin Herbert or Jake Fromm or Jordan Love out of Utah State or Jacob Eason out of Washington or maybe even Heisman Trophy favorite Jalen Hurts. That's a bunch of names I rolled off, 7 as a matter of fact, that could all be first rounders. Wonder if the Broncos would want one. Wonder if the Broncos would know they'd want one. They probably wouldn't if they don't play Drew Lock enough. Or they'll go with 1 game or 2 games with Drew Lock and then say, yep, that's good enough. That's very, 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 very bold. On the text line, 720-767, Sean, what kind of cougar are we talking about? Yeah, I get the joke. That's solid. I appreciate it. I'll be totally honest. I'm liberally borrowing from an old Simpsons joke with Homer and the Bear Patrol who buys a rock from Lisa because you don't see any bears around here, do you? From 720-435, if they don't activate Drew Lock, it shows this front office learned nothing from the Paxton Lynch saga. If they do this, I don't think this team can go forward with Elway. I think a lot of people may feel that way. Joe Flacco is not the long-term answer for this team. That is no denigration of Joe Flacco. To say that is not an insult to Joe Flacco, who's had an outstanding career. And seems like a good guy. I have no beef with Joe Flacco. I just know he's going to be 35 in a couple months. It doesn't look like he's got it anymore. And knowing that the 2019 season, when he's 34, is going to be a bust. 2020 season, if you go with Joe Flacco, the 35, hardly expect that to be better. Do you think the Denver Broncos would pick a quarterback in the first round if they haven't seen what Drew Lock can do? I don't. So the Broncos would just kick the can down the road? That'd be the plan? How do you like that plan? That's, by the way, for the Broncos, where they are. They won 5 games 2 years ago. They won 4 games. Pardon me, they won 6 games the year after that. They're on pace to win 5 games again right now. People who thought you've been through the low water mark. Oh, no. It can get worse. At the moment, it might get worse. What isn't likely to get worse, though, thank you, which is very, very nice, very, very exciting, are the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets have only seconds left in their game, and so we'll want to respond to that, take a look at that very, very quickly. So we will talk to our Fan Nuggets insider, Matt Moore, about the Nuggets' final result moments after the fact next. Well, Sean Drotar and our Nuggets insider Matt Moore, who joins us courtesy of Budweiser. Matt, the Nuggets take their season opener 108-100, snapping Portland's home winning streak, which went back to 2000. And they did it in an interesting fashion. Nikola Jokic, thanks to foul trouble, played 4 minutes in the first half. The bench was better than the starters, and in the end, things sort of righted. It's almost already in game one, we got to see how deep this Nuggets team really is and how dangerous that makes them.
You know, it's early in the season, and there's this idea that the games don't basically count before Christmas, but these games do. This is a road win in the Blazers' home opener for a division opponent. That's a big win. For everything to have gone wrong, you know, Jamal Murray and Gary Harris shot 7 of 25 from the field. Jokic has foul trouble. Hassan Whiteside has a phenomenal game, and yet Denver finds a way to get it done. Just their depth, they have so many weapons, like we talked about, and they really carried through. Great job by Michael Malone of keeping them together, of managing the rotations. He went to Jeremy Grant at the right times. Will Barton, I thought, despite an unimpressive shooting line, was really big for them. It had some big moments and big shots. That's, you know, for it being the first game of the season, that's a pretty big win on the road.
You talk about Will Barton, and Will Barton's a guy. I'll freely admit, I've picked on him a bit. I don't love his game, but no, we didn't have a good shooting line at 3 for 8. But you know what I liked about it, Matt, is he only took 8. Sometimes when Barton's not shooting, he just sort of keeps shooting. Instead, he worked on driving the lane, on trying to create, and ended up getting 12 foul shots, of which he made 11 of them. That's a pretty big difference in the way that he's played, for example, most of last year.
Yeah, and especially, you know, the Nuggets shot 56% from 3 tonight, which is an outlier and really great. They are going to have those. They have the capacity to have those kind of nights. But what's key is when you're shooting like that, the Nuggets at times, especially last year, would get in the habit of just taking too many threes, and you actually start to see that toward the end of the third quarter when the Blazers started to crawl back into it after the Nuggets had kind of extended the lead again. Barton being willing to get to the rim fundamentally changes that. It puts more pressure on the defense, and it takes advantage of some of the weaknesses in the Blazers' deeper rotation. So, yeah, I think that's a real step. And, you know, for Barton, who had the injury last year and was never the same, and said consistently it's just the injury, and then he was terrible in the playoffs. We thought it was like a mental thing, and he kept saying, no, it's just the injury. Had to face an open competition for his spot and said, I don't think it's an open competition, kept his confidence up. I think it's really good to see Will Barton. Will Barton is a guy that wants to be in Denver, has wanted to be a part of this team, and Nuggets fans should appreciate what he brings when he's healthy.
Well, especially when he plays like that. If the outlier was the 3-point shooting, and I mean, yeah, they're not going to shoot 56% from 3. Hopefully, the outlier of what they were shooting from 2, which was a not so robust 32.7%, is an outlier as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that was Jokic wasn't in the game, right? So you've got Mason Plumlee trying to finish inside, and he's not great in traffic. You've got Gary Harris trying to get shots up versus Whiteside, who just pretty much stuck in the paint and kept his hands up. The Nuggets were also, like, it's the first game, so they weren't making clean catches on quick passes, so they were bobbling a little bit. And once that happens, your success rate goes way down. They missed a bunch of shots on offensive putbacks. Again, Whiteside played well. So those little things kind of add up to contribute to the 2-point stuff. Monte Morris, I thought, had some good looks. He knocked down one mid-range jumper, but he had some good looks that just didn't go in. That's the thing is overall, it's like the 56% from 3 is going to stand out as like, oh, they just shot well, but it's like everything else went so poorly, and the Nuggets were still able to overcome it because they just have so much offensive talent.
Good performance by Jeremy Grant in his first performance as a Nugget. Michael Porter Jr. did not see the floor. I know a lot of fans wanted to see him. Is this something they should expect? Because, again, we just saw the depth tonight. At the moment, carving out those minutes is going to be hard.
It's going to get to be a tension point because one of 2 things is going to happen. The media is going to stop asking him about it, and then we're going to catch heat for not asking about it because the fans are going to be like, why don't you ask him why MPJ doesn't play? Or we're going to ask him about it, and Malone's going to get mad, and the media is going to catch flack from Malone for asking about it when he's already answered. He's going to have to earn minutes, and it's going to be tough. Wancho I don't think played tonight. The rotation's pretty tight. They have a lot of wings. They've got a lot of talent. They've got a lot of guys they can go to. They went to Grant in certain lineups. They've got Torrey Craig. They've got Malik Beasley. They've got all these options for guys that can step up, and MPJ is going to have to pick a spot. I think what you may see is when they face teams under 500, when it's easier opponents, when the competition level isn't as high, that's when we'll probably see MPJ get some run to test him out. But throwing him out on the floor versus the Blazers in a road home opener, I think that was probably part of the equation. He is going to have to work his way into the rotation.
Last one for you. We didn't get a chance to talk about him last night when we were previewing the game. Nikola Jokic, as I mentioned, 4 minutes in the first half, the fewest since 2016. The idea that maybe people were worrying about it, well, don't. He finished with 20 points, 13 boards, and a plus 14, the best on the team. Again, showing where this team goes, top to bottom, still appears to be Nikola Jokic first, Nikola Jokic second, Nikola Jokic third, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he just slammed the door on him. Like, I mean, it was amazing because Whiteside had played so well, and it was like becoming a story. Like, Hassan Whiteside, could he be the difference? And Jokic just said, "All right, fine. If you're going to block everything inside, I'm heading to the outside. And I'm just going to rain down threes on you. Fine, I'm done with this." And he just slammed the door, and that was it. You know, he made the right plays, carried them. That pass for the corner three to Murray was huge. He just continues to take a step forward, and this is another great example of, even when Jokic doesn't have a good night, he still has a good night. Nikola Jokic is like pizza. He's always good.
That's a good one. I like that one. Nikola Jokic is like pizza. I actually think Nikola would even like that one. Have you tried that one on him? You should try that one on him next time.
I'll see.
He is Matt Moore. Make sure you follow him. Hardwood Paroxysm on Twitter. And it's terrific to have him on. Looking forward to having you on all season long. I'm so excited you're with us, Matt. And the next up, the Suns, one of those teams you're talking about. Maybe Michael Porter Jr. gets his chance there. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right, take care. That was our Nuggets insider, Matt Moore. Thanks to Budweiser, official beer sponsor of the Denver Nuggets. And a great start. I actually said this last night. I'm delighted to be wrong. I thought the Nuggets would win this game. I think would lose this game. They had so much hype coming into the season. I thought it might be easy to buy your own press clippings a little bit. And when Jokic didn't play all that well or all that much in the first, thanks to the fouls, I thought maybe they were in trouble, but it shows what this team is capable of. It's going to be a very, very exciting year. Going over to the other denizens of the Pepsi Center, Mikko Rantanen was hurt in the last game in a particularly uncomfortable-looking injury. It looked bad. A little bit of good news for the Avalanche regarding Mikko Rantanen. We'll talk about that with our Avalanche insider, Adrian Dater, next. Following Mikko Rantanen's injury, got news on it and wanted to bring in our Avalanche insider, Adrian Dater, who joins us courtesy of Bud Light. And AD, really good news for the Avs. That injury looked like it could be pretty bad for Mikko Rantanen, as it turns out, just week to week, and with Jared Bednar suggesting it would not be 4 to 6 of those weeks.
Yeah, Sean, a lot of signing released today. Avalanche headquarters. The press conference with Bednar started out a little weird. Colleague of mine asked a question, so what's the status on Rantanen? He goes, week to week, and I'll know more on Tuesday or Wednesday. That didn't sound great to me, but a few more questions went by. I decided to follow up with a question like, all right, Coach, you said there'd be more known on Tuesday or Wednesday. Does that mean there's going to be a lot more tests? Does that mean, maybe swelling has to go down? And he responded with, well, look, I can tell you, I don't think it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks. I think we're hoping that it's going to be significantly sooner than that he returns. And right then, everything brightened. So, it sounds to me like it's probably a knee sprain, an MCL sprain, maybe. I think we can rule out a torn ACL right now or a high ankle sprain, which is something you worry about whenever you have something quick like that.
Yeah, I think you wouldn't be week to week with those, that's for sure.
Right. I mean, I think when you have a torn ACL, they'll come out right out and say that. You can usually tell right away on an MRI on that. So the fact that they did not say that and they said that he should be back, they're expecting, hoping. Don't forget, the Avs don't say things lightly when they say anything publicly, right? This is a very PR-conscious team. Everything's got to be very much vetted with the PR staff before anybody says anything. So when Jared Bednar says that they're hoping that it's going to be significantly less than 4 to 6 weeks, I think that, that's gold that we can go on the fact that he's going to be out, 2 to 3 weeks, maybe. If all goes well. Not a doctor. I've said that a lot today. But, when the team says that, and they put it out there publicly, that has the backing of their doctors when they're just basically being told what the doctors are telling them. So anytime a coach says that, that's basically the doctor saying that. And I think that's great news. I mean, that is great news for the day. I mean, we went into this day scared that it was going to be a torn ACL and maybe out for the season. Now they're going to look for a trade and who's going to play right wing on the first line. When in fact, he's maybe just going to miss 2 to 3 weeks and all's well in 2 to 3 weeks, and that's just super news for Colorado Avalanche fans.
Yeah, even if it was a month from the injury before he returned, he would miss a grand total of 11 games. And the Avalanche seem to have more than enough talent to overcome that kind of gap for that short a span.
And don't forget, Sean, short-term injuries are very often good for teams. Now, it's a very good test for a team. A lot of times coaches will tell you, I'd like an injury to a top player early in my season because then I can mix and match a little bit with guys who need some ice time, who aren't getting enough ice time. Now, Jared Bednar gets to experiment a little bit on that first line. Maybe he puts Colin Wilson up there. Maybe he puts Valerie Nichushkin up there. Maybe he puts, maybe he mixes around a little bit. He puts Vladislav Kamenev somehow on the top 3 lines. Now he's got a chance to be a coach and really experiment and try to dig his way out of a short-term hole. Usually, when you lose a guy long-term, that's the hard hole to get out of. You usually pay for that. But very often, coaches and teams can survive these short-term injuries and flourish at the end because sometimes those guys who were pining to get ice time and they couldn't get it, now they get it. Now they play well, they get some confidence, and even if they have to go back on the shelf, well, at least they've got a good pat on the back from the coach, and they feel better about themselves. And that's often what happens. So we'll see what happens. Sometimes a team can go in the hole, too, right away with a top player. But I think the team is built to withstand a loss of 2 to 3 weeks. Let's go worst-case scenario, 6 weeks with Brandon. I think this team is very well built to withstand that and even emerge with a winning record.
Yeah, you'd still be talking a total of 17 games, which is really not the end of the world. And you're right. I think the opportunity for a lot of the young guys to step up, maybe you discover somebody who has a little bit more ability, or you put sometimes pressure on guys. You think that pressure can break guys, but pressure can make guys too. The opportunity for someone to step up and make a difference and realize maybe I belong here. Young guys like you're talking about, Kamenev perhaps. Those kind of guys now have an opportunity that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yep. I mean, Kamenev is a guy that's 23 years old, got a lot of talent, has not played at all this year. You know, I sat around and talked a little bit today with Nikita Zadorov, kind of a big brother to Kamenev, is a Russian guy, a little bit older. And I asked him, I mean, how tough has it been on him? And, he said it's been tough. He wants to get in. He's 23 years old. He's got a lot of talent. Just hasn't found, he doesn't have a chance to play yet. But this is a very deep lineup, and so it's tough to make the lineup. So now you've got an injury. Now he's got a chance to go in and show, again, what maybe he can do. So this is his opportunity. He has to take advantage of it. You only get so many shots in hockey. If he doesn't show it, he's going to be back on the shelf, or he's going to be back on the minors. That's just how this works. But now he's got a chance, and I think you're going to see him in the lineup. I also think you're going to see Nichushkin play some too, and he's another guy who really is pining for an opportunity to show that he is more than just a healthy scratch every night. So, again, what's the old saying, Sean? Adversity is just another door to opportunity, something like that.
Something like that, yeah, exactly.
Like that.
Make sure you follow Adrian, by the way, at @Dater on Twitter and at Colorado Hockey Now. His story on Mikko Rantanen made free. You don't have to subscribe. Check it out, and then subscribe when you find out how much you like everything that's there. So thanks, AD, for coming on. I appreciate it, and we'll see what happens after Jared Butler gets to reshuffle the lines out in Vegas on Friday.
Yeah, Sean, I assume we'll be talking Friday night after the game in Vegas?
Sounds good. Hopefully it's coming to some sort of win, too. Keep it going for those Avs.
Lady luck for the Avs in Vegas.
Sounds great. That. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, AD. Have a good night.
Care,
that was our Avalanche insider, Adrian Dater. Thanks to Bud Light, official beer sponsor of the Colorado Avalanche. Get a little Avalanche talk in there. Get a little Nuggets talk in there. Nuggets with the big win on the road. Avalanche with great news. I mean, it's not great that Mikko Rantanen is hurt, but I like a lot of the points that AD made. Specifically that, yes, this early in the season, especially if you're talking about, like we mentioned, even if he were to miss 6 weeks, which nobody believes he will now, that's still 17 games. That's not ideal, but I don't think you look at it and go, oh no, they're doomed. So the fact that if he got back a month after that injury, he'd miss 11 games. That's it. I think that actually, like Adrian said, it doesn't make them better. Don't get me wrong. But if you're looking for the silver lining on that dark cloud, the truth of the matter is that, yes, you would have an opportunity to play Vladislav Kamenev. You'd be able to play Nichushkin. You'd be able to maybe mix and match some lines and see how these guys react. It works in a lot of different ways, I think, for the Avs that might pay dividends down the road. Remember, this is still kind of a young team. They have some guys that are trying to make their way and earn their stripes. So it may very well be an opportunity for some of these players, and the Avs might find out they get even better players back in the process. Plus, truth of the matter is, 64% of the Avs' goals this season have been scored by guys not named McKinnon, Landeskog, and Rantanen on the top line. They have depth they did not have before. We'll talk about the Drew Lock situation. I don't like it. Week 14, I don't like it. I'll explain why and why it matters. And by the way, why even this season might just be the start of a very, very long skid if the Broncos don't change their minds. Next. On the RamosLaw.com text line, getting a couple texts about the idea of Joe Flacco staying around as quarterback, something that John Elway seems to indicate through Mike Kliss's article, indicating that Drew Lock would be activated for week 14. It's week 8, if you're keeping track. Maybe it feels longer than that after the Broncos 2-5 start. That's a ways away. Text from 720-244. Hey, Sean, are there any decent tackles or centers in the 2020 draft? I could live with Flacco for one more year if you tell me you're going to build an offensive line that's going to be great. Okay, let me answer that. That is a two-part text. Yes, there are tackles in the draft that are considered to be very good. I think Andrew Thomas out of Georgia looks great. Great. He'd look great in a Broncos uniform. I've heard good things about Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa. I have to admit, I really haven't seen him in any extended view. I just haven't had a chance to see an Iowa game. But there are folks that I've seen that I tend to believe that think that he could be a top 15, maybe even top 10 pick. But Thomas looks amazing to me. So there's your first part. Yes, there are decent tackles in the draft. Second part, if you tell me you're going to build an offensive line that's going to be great. Well, as Shakespeare said, therein lies the rub. How many great offensive linemen did the Broncos have? I would say one. And great is probably too soon. But whatever. Since we're grading on a curve, and it's the Denver Broncos, they give up 8 sacks to one of the worst defenses in the league last week, we'll grade on a curve. Dalton Reisner. Boom. Rock solid starter. Call it good. You got it. You got a left guard. You got a left tackle? Garrett Bowles? No. Long way from great. Ron Leary? I think Ron Leary is actually pretty good. I think Ron Leary's hurt. And I'm afraid that Ron Leary, in this point in his career, is kind of always going to be hurt from here on out. So, no. Elijah Wilkinson is a backup. So, no. Juwan James is pretty good, but he's kind of like that sports car you have that you spend a lot of money on, but it's always in the shop. So, no. And Connor McGovern seems like a league average guard who is no longer playing guard, but playing center. So, no. So let's say you picked Andrew Thomas, which I'm 100% on board for. Oh, yeah. Saddle up. Love it. Then you would have a starting left tackle, because I don't know what you do with Garrett Bowles. And you would have a starting left guard. Cool. Unfortunately, in an offensive line, you have 5 starters. And your offensive line is only as good as the worst guy on it. So I'm not going to tell you the Broncos can build an offensive line that's going to be great in one offseason because they simply can't. So there's that. Also on the RamosLaw.com text line, that's 303-713-1043, is my friend Butch. Butch, how are you tonight?
Getting on with Sean. How are you?
I am okay. Well, you know what? No, Butch. No, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. Because I read the idea that Drew Lock's not going to be active until week 14, and I'm actually been seething about it all day long.
Yeah, I agree with you. As far as last phone call, I think I lost signal, but, you know, that's why they invented more than one day in a year, I guess. But I've been wanting to, bring this up with not just you, but just anyone that'll listen. Let's just say hypothetically, somehow, some way, Drew Lock is the starter next year. Either, you know, he impresses so much in preseason, or if he plays this year and he looks, I mean, there's not going to be much of a sample size. I guess I can't believe they're basically just making him injured longer than he actually is, or something to that effect. But, I mean, are we going to have Drew Lock as a starter and then have I would assume, the league's highest paid backup at close to $20 million a year in Joe Flacco, or as I like to call him, Ho-Hum Joe. I mean, he earlier in his career, he seemed to be, he's never a rah-rah guy, but I just think he's either mentally checked out or just made so much money, because I remember him as a playoff quarterback and even outplaying Manning, you know, some fist pumps, and he showed a lot more fire and desire than he is now.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough to
So
tell.
it's kind of a two-part question for
Yeah.
you also.
Yeah, it's
As
kind
well
of
as
a tough
comment.
one to tell. And thank you, Butch. I appreciate it. I think when it comes to Flacco's demeanor, I don't really have a problem with it. I think one of the things that a lot of people fall for is the sort of the mystique of the Ray Lewis type, the screaming at everybody and dancing around and acting, well, kind of like you would think a person outside of the football field was crazy. And that's supposedly leadership. There were guys on that Ravens team. Trevor Price was one of them that talked about it once, that basically said that there were guys just laughing behind Ray Lewis's back, that it wasn't leadership. They're like he's looking like a clown. So there's plenty of ways to lead. And Drew Brees isn't a huge rah-rah guy either. I think that Flacco's even keel is actually kind of appealing in a lot of ways. So I don't know if he's checked out. I think he understands he's older. I think he understands he's not on a good team. I think he gets that. But regarding next year, let's say Drew Lock, let's say the Broncos somehow, either somebody, anybody, maybe the Broncos just torpedo their season against Indy and Cleveland, and they realize, okay, now we really are done. And maybe they change their plans on Drew Lock, get smart, and activate him a little earlier. But even if they do activate him on 14 and they see enough, perhaps he goes all Patrick Mahomes on the Raiders and they decide that's good enough. He's our quarterback. I have a tough time thinking Flacco's here next year because the dead money for Flacco post June 1st is about $3.4 million. That's not that outlandish. Because of that, I think that's movable for somebody. If it isn't, I would expect the Broncos would actually probably just release him. I don't think they're going to ask Joe Flacco at 35 years old to back up Drew Lock. I think they just probably eat the dead cap money and move along. So there's the two parts, I think, of that. I don't think Flacco's a bad leader. I don't think Flacco's a bad guy. I don't think Flacco's a bad quarterback, but I don't think he's a long-term answer. And if the Broncos don't either, and it would be best if they found out sooner rather than later, then I don't expect him to be with the team at all next season. I think that would be pretty surprising. I wouldn't expect that to happen. Looking at the last couple days for the Broncos, they trade Emmanuel Sanders. The last offensive player left, by the way, on the Super Bowl 50 roster. They're all gone. Are Elway and the front office deluding themselves in thinking that they can continue to chase wins, chase the playoffs, instead of looking to make other trades and jumpstart a rebuild? We'll talk about that next. If the Denver Broncos if they bring up Drew Lock, okay, they get him ready in week 14 where, and I will read Mike Kliss's article real quick. The idea between what Mike Kliss said, and like I said, Mike Kliss has some highly placed sources within Dove Valley. It's the advantage of being the official Broncos network, right? Locke would likely start practicing in week 11. The plan at that point would be to practice 3 full weeks before Locke would be activated as the backup quarterback for the final 4 games of the season with a chance to play in the final game or 2. Okay. Quarterback has been the Broncos' biggest problem since Peyton Manning retired. Now, it's not as if it's the Broncos' only problem. Their offensive line is still not good. They may have gotten incredibly lucky because the argument not too long ago was, what do the Broncos need? And what we needed was a middle linebacker, right? Like, we need a middle linebacker. They might have really lucked out and gotten one in Alexander Johnson. Because the argument of picking Noah Fant over, say, Devin Bush, which, by the way, was the wrong choice. That's not Noah Fant's fault, by the way. All he can do is go to the team that picked him and play, which he's done, which he's been okay. He hasn't been Devin Bush. But maybe they got lucky. Now, of course, you're running a 3-4, having Devin Bush and Alexander Johnson would be kind of awesome. But anyway, that didn't happen. But at least that might not be the same gaping hole that it was, because you seem to have a dynamic playmaker in Johnson, and in Davis, you have a reliable guy that kind of hoovers up all those tackles that are routine. So maybe that's not the glaring spot. Cornerback might be, after Chris Harris leaves via free agency. That could be a significant issue. You find out there. But the offensive line and quarterback are by far the 2 biggest problems. I don't think the Denver Broncos are going to draft a quarterback in the first round. And like I mentioned, there are potentially 7. Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, Jake Fromm, Joe Burrow of LSU, Jordan Love of Utah State, Jacob Eason of Washington, and maybe even Jalen Hurts of Oklahoma. People laugh at that, just like the idea that Heisman Trophy winner Lamar Jackson would be a first-rounder. Yeah, who's laughing now? Maybe 7 quarterbacks could be picked in the first round. The Broncos have a desperate need there. And by the way drafts work, I've told everybody all the time, never fall for the silliness of teams pick the best player available. They don't. They never have. They never will. They pick the best player available at a position of need. That's how it works. Okay? That's how it works. Looking already getting ahead of it, CBS put together a mock draft, and they have the Denver Broncos at the moment picking 8th. A couple other sites had the same thing. 3 of them that I looked at had them picking the same player. Here's CBS's argument. This is the best case scenario for the Broncos, and they're hard to watch offense. They land the most dynamic player in this entire draft class. Sounds good. That would be wide receiver Jerry Jeudy out of Alabama. Here's the problem with that. By the way, I know they just traded Emmanuel Sanders. I know that they're rushing Tim Patrick back as if he's the savior. Tim Patrick isn't exactly making people forget, Ed McCaffrey or Rod Smith or Haven Moses or, well, anybody. He's nice. He's fine. Deshaun Hamilton. Jerry Jeudy. Talented guy. Kind of coming out of Bama with the same buzz that Calvin Ridley did. And he's been nice. Okay? Here's the problem with picking a wide receiver. For the wide receiver to do well, and if you don't think this had anything to do with Emmanuel Sanders' request for a trade, by the way, I don't know what to tell you. For a wide receiver to do well, what has to happen? Quarterback has to get him the ball, right? Quarterback has to deliver on time and on target. So, kind of getting the problem there. The Broncos really don't know if they have a quarterback yet. And if they play Drew Lock for just a tiny game or two, in what could be meaningless games, you probably don't know then either. So the Broncos would go get a wide receiver. You need a good quarterback to get on the ball, and you don't know if you have one. Also, by the way, what does a quarterback need? You need a line, right? To keep you, upright. Not sacked 8 times like Joe Flacco. I know some of those are on Flacco. It's true. Still, 8 sacks is 8 sacks. You talk about positions that are dependent and positions that are not dependent. For example, a defensive lineman is not a dependent position. If they go shove their man out of the way and make a tackle, they didn't need anybody else. Football goes still, after all these years, from the lines out. The linebackers are dependent on the line. The defensive backs are dependent on the linebackers and the line. On offense, the line itself can be independent. The running backs depend on the line. The quarterbacks depend on the line and the good running backs. And the wide receivers depend on the line, the running backs, the quarterback, before they can do anything. Wide receiver is the most dependent position in football. Picking someone like Jerry Jeudy, as exciting as it is for raw talent, would be the equivalent of getting a beautiful chrome hood ornament on a 76 Nova. The rest of it doesn't work. There's no point. My worry, though, is that the Broncos, who seem to still believe that they're in the hunt, just need to get a little bit better at a couple spots, this might be exactly what they're thinking. Because if the Broncos if they really, truly are not interested in activating Drew Lock until week 14, and they're really, truly interested in only finding out what he can do in the last game or two, then this might be where you're going. They're not going to go with the quarterback then. They're not. Forget it. How can you go with a quarterback if you don't even know what you've got? I mean, this is just that simple. And if they don't have a quarterback, if they look at a small sample size with Drew Lock and figure, yep, that's our guy, we're good. They don't pick any quarterback in the first round in the 2020 draft. And if they're wrong, Drew Lock isn't the guy, and they got fooled by practices and a game or two, now you have a second-round draft pick who isn't the answer, a 35-year-old quarterback that isn't the answer, and a repeat of this season. And another year of watching some of your best players leave and watching your best player, Von Miller, squander his prime. Can't happen. Can't happen. They've got to activate Drew Lock sooner. It's a fascinating day in football history. An important day in football history. More important than you'd probably even imagine for October 23rd. I'll tell you why next. One of the things we like to do is talk about the date in history in sports. There's been so much history in sports. Part of what's fun. World Series is upon us, and you think about all the things that means. So, like going back a little bit in time and looking about what happened on these days in sports history. And this was a monumental day. When you take a look at football, not just NFL football, but college football. Today would be the birthday. I mean, if you live to an all-time record of, being crazy old, of John Heisman. Yeah, that Heisman. Heisman Trophy guy. He coached, by the way, among a few universities. University of Akron, Auburn, Clemson, Georgia Tech, Pennsylvania, and Rice. Whoa. College football all-time record of 186, 70, and 18. By the way, he also coached baseball and basketball. That's kind of impressive. Inducted into Hall of Fame in 1954, and of course, the Heisman Trophy is named after John Heisman, his birthday, October 23rd, 1869 in Cleveland, Ohio. And that's not all for pro football. Today is the anniversary of the very first NFL game where the Green Bay Packers beat Minneapolis 7-6. A big day. Seems a little weird. The first NFL game would be this late in October, but there you go. I like taking a peek at those things. Let's give you an idea of what happened back when. Certain case, way back when, 1860s. But there you go. Today is really, in many ways, the real birth date of the NFL. And the Packers, of course, get that win. So, that's this day in history. The Denver Nuggets got a big win, and it really was a big win. And it is funny, you take a look at these games. Yes, of course, it's early. Something that always throws me off. It happens in baseball all the time, and it drives me crazy. People kind of talk about it and say, oh, well, whatever. These April games don't matter. Really? Because the wins count the same, and the losses count the same months later. Also in football and basketball and hockey. The Nuggets off to a good start after their 108-100 win on the road. The starters weren't even that good for most of the game. Then they kind of caught fire, knocked off the Portland team that knocked them off, by the way, in 7 games in the Western Conference semis. They get that win on the road against an elite team in the West. They really are. Blazers are good, really good. Back and forth, tight game. The fact that Nuggets win this by not playing that well, hey, that's a great start. And these games do count. They do matter. Because let's go back real quick and look at the standings in the West last season. Before people look at it and say, well, it's early. Yeah, it is, but they all still count. The Nuggets finished with 54 wins. 6 wins behind them were the LA Clippers. They were the 8th seed. 6 over 82 games from the number 2 to the number 8 in this West, which is stacked. You want to bank every single one of those wins. And you know how many wins and how many games the Nuggets were ahead of the Trailblazers last year? 1. To get the number 2 seed. 1. And the Blazers were 3. So big win for them. That's exciting. They go off and play the Phoenix Suns, who were the worst team in the Western Conference. They won 19 games last year. So the Nuggets hope to start off 2-0. The Avalanche had an outstanding start to their season. They will play Vegas on Friday. And if you ever want an example of why those fast starts matter, this is the reason. The Avalanche will be without Mikko Rantanen probably between 2 and 3 weeks, but could be longer. Wouldn't be shocking if it was longer. That's actually a best-case scenario given where they were. But the Avs have started off 7-1-1 and are tied with the Edmonton Oilers for the best record in the West. Well, that means, guess what? If you happen to lose a couple because Rantanen's out, you give yourself a cushion. That's why these matter. They will play the Golden Knights on Friday, who have 14 points, the third best team in the West. Different matchup than the Nuggets get with the Suns, for sure. For the Denver Broncos, the news of the day, of course, Drew Lock not expected to be activated until week 14 of the regular season. I am shocked. Shocked. Not everybody is. From the 702-769. Drotar, why are you surprised? Fangio flat out said Locke wasn't ready for the NFL, that Mizzou's offense he ran didn't translate to the NFL, and you know what? That's okay. Locke's development is not on your clock. Peter King said, don't be surprised to see Elway make a move for Teddy Bridgewater. Elway has 2 more years to get it right, and he's doing it his way. Then why did he pick Drew Lock? John Elway picked Drew Lock. If he wants to keep going with Case Keenum's and Joe Flacco's and Teddy Bridgewater's, why did he even waste his time? Why? Give me that. That makes no sense. No sense. John Elway drafted Drew Lock. Why did he draft a guy do you think he drafted a guy in the second round with the intention of making him a backup for his whole career? Was that the plan? Well, that doesn't exactly fit John Elway's win now MO that he completely talks about, right? You don't draft backup quarterbacks when your starters aren't good enough. It's not why he drafted Drew Lock. And you're right. His development isn't on my clock. It's on the Broncos' clock. It's on John Elway's clock. It's on the people who try to sell season tickets' clock. Because this Broncos team won 5 games 2 years ago, 6 games last year, and they're on pace to win 5 again. More and more empty seats keep showing up down a mile high. You're right. Drew Lock's development is not on my clock. Because I don't get paid by the Broncos. It's on your clock, fans. It's on your clock, Broncos country. You okay with winning 5 and 6 games all the time? If you are, cool. No rush. Yes, you don't have to find out who your quarterback is. Don't worry about it, right? Besides Peyton Manning, this team's just been nails about picking them all up, haven't they? And that's all the more reason to play Drew Lock. There's a chance he's not the fit. It's been fun. We'll talk about this more as the week goes on. Thursday Night Football's tomorrow. We'll follow that. Vikings go for another win as their offense rounds into form. Kevin Kistner's been in the booth. Thank you as always. Want to thank specifically Adrian Dater, Avalanche Insider, Matt Moore, Nuggets Insider. Go give those guys follows on Twitter. You'll love what they do. I love that they're on this program. I love that you listen to this program. Thank you very, very much. My name's Sean Drotar. I'll catch you tomorrow right here on Denver's Sports Station, Sports Radio 104.3 The Fan.